and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers here with a post-game edition of the show. And Jack, I guess we picked a good day for this as the Diamondbacks lose their they make their losing streak go away once and for all, at least this losing streak, as it ends at 3 games. They beat the Brewers tonight by a final score of 3-2. Obviously, Jack, a couple of close games in Milwaukee before this one. This one, the Diamondbacks were finally able to get over the top.
I guess some habits are hard to break, but we actually did manage to schedule a live post game on a game they won. So there is progress in the air, folks.
There you go. Ryne Nelson, Jack, was very, very good in this one for the Diamondbacks, as he has often been here over the last calendar year. 6 innings from him, 6 hits, 1 run allowed, no walks, 3 strikeouts. He did give up some hard contact at times. He made some mistake pitches, but he was really good at wiggling out of those jams.
Yeah, I think, that's what happens when you throw strikes and you're around the strike zone. I mean, of his 98 pitches, 63 were for strikes. Very fastball heavy again, but it worked for him tonight, as it has for most of the last 13 months of baseball. Really, since last July till now, this 3+ ERA, Ryne Nelson is the guy we've seen with a few bumps along the road.
The question we posed there on our opening slide, will Ryne Nelson be the Diamondbacks opening day starter in 2026? Jack, what do you think about that right now?
Well, I think that among starting pitchers currently within the Diamondbacks organization on the Major League roster, or in AAA or AA, there's no question that he is the best and most consistent pitcher they have. It's just been proven over and over and over again for the last 13 months that he's the one that you can most likely depend on to give you a good start. And so I don't see how it could be anybody else based on where they are. Now, if they pick up a pitcher during the offseason that you would want to slot in ahead of them, either via free agency or trade, that's always possible. But if they don't trade or sign for a guy that's clearly ahead of Ryne Nelson, to me, it seems like there should be no doubt that he's the opening day starter.
Nelson, his last 30 starts, Jack, this goes back to July 1st of last year. Obviously, there are some relief appearances in there as well. He opened the season as primarily a reliever. But in those last 30 starts, he has a 3.26 ERA, a 1.04 whip. It's 173 and 2/3 innings. It's not a small sample size at this point. 2.1 walks per 9 to 8.1 Ks per 9. This is, as you said, I mean, this is just the pitcher that Ryne Nelson has been here for a pretty decent while at this point. And I'm not sure if I think he'll be the opening day starter next year, not because I don't think he's the best pitcher on this team currently. I certainly do think that. But going into next year, Jack, I think the Diamondbacks are going to have to spend some money on this rotation. They certainly have spots to fill. I'm not sure they're going to get, somebody super splashy, but given the fact that Ryne Nelson is still relatively young, it wouldn't shock me if you sign, a veteran starter and that pitcher gets the opening day nod, even if they're not necessarily a top flight pitcher in the game. I guess Merrill Kelly is maybe the main name that comes to mind there. If the D-backs do bring back a Merrill Kelly, I think you're probably giving him the nod on opening day over someone like Ryne Nelson.
Sure. As I said at the outset, there's nobody in the organization that you would put over him. I don't think there's really any debate about that at this point, but some might. But if they bring in, if they brought Zach Gallen back on a 1-year qualifying offer, or if they re-sign Merrill Kelly, or if they get a veteran starter that's clearly better, or at least close to better. But it certainly better not be something that's based on salary. I'd be really disappointed if they did that.
I imagine maybe Eduardo Rodriguez is a name you have in your head when you're making that comment. And Erod's start in this series did not go well. We'll talk more about Erod a little bit later in the show. Another pitcher, Jack, that really stood out in the game tonight was Andrew Saalfrank, who finished the job in this one, notched a 5-out save. The Diamondbacks are shorthanded in the bullpen in every respect at this point. And Andrew Saalfrank came in and delivered, was able to get 5 outs to finish off this game. Obviously, it was a back-to-back for him as well. And he's really shined, Jack, in this role that he's been in for a while now, where he's maybe the highest leverage guy in this bullpen for Torey Lovullo. He's been able to deliver more often than not.
Yeah, Andrew Saalfrank, I mean, sorry, Jesse, you froze out there for a moment. I didn't hear a little bit of what you said. Can you hear me? Because I'm not seeing my mouth moving.
I can hear you. I'm hoping you can hear me back.
Yeah.
And it looks like Jack has dropped off, which is unfortunate. So we'll hope that Jack is able to get back here before too long. I'll keep things running here in the meantime as we hope that Jack is able to return. If you can't hear me, please, I guess it would be kind of obvious. You wouldn't be able to hear me even saying this, but hopefully you're able to hear me and we're set to go. Jack is now back. Jack, can you hear me? Are we set here?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate all of you bearing with us through some technical difficulties here. But yeah, as far as Andrew Saalfrank is concerned, Jack, I guess what makes it especially impressive is that his velocity is not what it was a couple years ago. Saalfrank was throwing 92 miles an hour back in 2023 when he first came up, and we've seen that dip down to 88, 89, and yet his curveball is just a really good pitch, and he's continued to use that and be effective leaning on that pitch.
And also location with the sinker. I mean, it may only be 88, but he's locating it really well. And it's got some pretty good movement on it. So if you've got movement and you've got that pinpoint location, which he seems to have had most of his outings, then, you're going to be able to get some outs. So, kudos to him. Sure, all the predictive stuff, it's 20 innings, the FIP and XFIP is in the mid threes. I certainly don't expect a 1.35 ERA to continue. That's just not likely. But the way he's stepping up, I think it's the very definition of the word moxie. And I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Well, we have a whole lot more to get to with regard to this game, as well as some other topics we're going to hit in this live edition of Snakes Territory. So don't go away. We'll be back right after this break. The dog days of summer means it's time for the boys of summer to kick it into gear, and the best way to cash in on your baseball IQ is with DraftKings Sportsbook. Never bet on baseball before? It's simple. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Well, we are back here on Snakes Territory talking about this 3-2 Diamondbacks win over the Milwaukee Brewers. The pitching aside, Jack, the Diamondbacks offense did just enough in this game. They scored 3 runs, all via the home run. Blaze Alexander came through with a opposite field 2-run shot. That came in the top of the 6th inning. D-backs had a 2-1 lead at that point in the game. And then Geraldo Perdomo later extended that lead with a solo home run. And that home run proved to be very, very big, as Juan Burgos gave up a home run to William Contreras shortly thereafter. D-backs sneak out of this one with a 1-run victory.
Yeah, and you have a note there at the bottom as well. Thomas 2 for 4, ironically. Neither of those hits resulted in an RBI, but they were both base hits with runners in scoring position. Just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, you feel kind of bad for Alec Thomas there, Jack. One of those was a single where the Diamondbacks didn't score because they sent the runner from second base. That was Pavin Smith in the 5th inning trying to score from second. Tim Bogar, the new third base coach, sent him, and he was out by a pretty wide margin. And then later in the game, Alek Thomas was up in a similar spot and hit another single with a runner at second. And that time, Bogar did not send the runner, and he probably would have been safe if he had. So the third base coach woes sort of continue for the D-backs, although I'm not sure either of those was necessarily a big-time error on the part of Bogar. It made sense to be aggressive there with Pavin in the 5th inning. There were 2 outs, and then later in the game, it was, a situation where there was only 1 out in the inning. And I think he would have been safe, but probably only because the throw bounced off the pitching mound, and that helped.
Right.
That helped quite a bit there.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been safe in hindsight because of the way the ball bounced, but you couldn't know that when the throw was coming in. El Gallo, 49.78, just back to Saalfrank's sinker. He says it has great movement, very emphatic there, and I think he's right about that. He's getting tremendous movement on the sinker.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a part of it too. If it was a really straight pitch, then I think he would be having more issues than he is, but it does have some pretty good movement on it, and his ground ball rate is very, very high. So as long as he's able to generate ground balls with that sinker and then get enough swing and miss to get by with the breaking pitch, I think it can work for him pretty well. Another thing I should mention, Jack, is that in the 9th inning, Saalfrank did get some help from Lourdes Gurriel Jr. I'm not really sure why Andrew Monasterio wanted to do this, but he hit a line drive to left field with 1 out in the 9th inning, tried to stretch a single into a double, and he was out by a pretty wide margin. A very nice play by Gurriel there.
Yeah. The other point, of course, Pavin coming out of the game, getting hurt today with the quad injury. That's going to be an IL stint, almost certainly. A strained quad is an injured list stint. I would bet the rent on that. So expect a roster move overnight or coming into tomorrow if they can get somebody here in time. And, it looks like we're going to see a lot more of Tyler Locklear, which is going to maybe be an opportunity for him to get more reps and see if he can figure out how to make some more contact. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well.
Geraldo Perdomo, I mentioned it earlier, Jack, also homered in this game. It was a very big home run when all was said and done, a bit of a wall scraper down the right field line. And Perdomo home runs have felt pretty normal lately. He's had an extraordinary month of August, and his MVP case, Jack, only continues to get stronger. I believe that over at Fangraphs, he and Shohei Ohtani are now separated by 0.2 WAR. Someone tweeted that earlier in the night.
That's not correct.
That isn't? No?
No, because they're looking at the number that doesn't include Ohtani's Fangraphs pitching WAR.
You know what? That is a great point. That's definitely going to help Ohtani a little bit there. All right. Well,
I ran a table the other day and I was doing like the A WAR. Remember we did that in the previous show.
Right.
So Ohtani coming into tonight had 7 Fangraphs WAR. And like 5.5 or 5.6, I think 5.6 baseball reference WAR. So Fangraphs WAR is based on FIP, peripherals. Ohtani's got like a 2-point-something FIP. I don't know what he did tonight. He was pitching. But his runs against per 9 are like 4.61 or something. So because of the high RA9, the baseball reference WAR is 0 for pitching. But because of the great FIP, and peripherals, strikeout to walks, and homers allowed, the Fangraphs WAR is 1.1. So just a quick explanation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jack. It is unfortunate that like Fangraphs leaderboard does not take into account the whole, both sides of the ball with Ohtani. But I guess you can kind of understand that Fangraphs is not programmed to have position players who also pitch. It's not exactly a normal thing. I guess we could sort of understand that. But regardless, Jack, Geraldo Perdomo has still had just an unbelievable month here in August. He is at 15 home runs and 87 RBI now on the season. Maybe he's not the front runner for NL MVP at the moment, but he's certainly in that conversation. And he also, I think you could make a pretty good case for him as the best shortstop in baseball here in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I made what I felt was a very strong case for him to be top 5 MVP candidate. I understand that he's not taking the MVP away from Ohtani. And, of course, I rankled some people by even mentioning that he should get votes, but they didn't quite get what I meant when I said he should get votes. I didn't mean take away first place votes from Ohtani. If the election were today, Ohtani's your MVP. I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
But, in my view, Perdomo's top 5. Very easy for me to make a case for him to be top 5 and even top 3. All right. Now, MLB Network, they did a segment on the MVP, and at least he finally cracked their list at number 10. They're all wet to have him all the way down to 10. The notion that there's been 9 more players more valuable this year than Geraldo Perdomo is absurd.
I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, did they have Corbin Carroll on the list above Perdomo?
They might have. I didn't actually see it. Alex D'Agostino told me about it.
Okay. Because, obviously Corbin Carroll has had a pretty good season as well, and his OPS is higher than Perdomo's at this point, and his WAR is in the same general neighborhood. So it wouldn't totally shock me if people had Carroll higher on their list than they have Perdomo. Outside of Perdomo and Blaze, Jack, who did the heavy lifting for the Diamondbacks offensively in this one, you really just have to like what you got from Ryne Nelson on a day like this as he continues to solidify himself, and the bullpen not pretty. It generally is not. But they were able to get the job done, Jack. Juan Burgos, even though he gave up a home run later in his outing, he did get a really big out to end a threat in the 7th inning. He entered with the bases loaded. Kyle Backus allowed the bases to be loaded against him. Burgos was able to wiggle out of that jam. So it's not an ideal situation where you have all these super young guys just kind of thrust into these roles, but I guess you could view it as a maybe good experience for them at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I have concerns about Burgos. I mean, I'm not sure that the stuff is good enough to get away with the lack of command.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's either wild or he's in the middle of the plate, and I just don't think the stuff is good enough to be there. He's going to have to figure out how to get on the edges a little bit more. He can't put stuff near the middle of the plate. I mean, very few people can.
Well, we just got what I believe is our first super chat in Snakes territory history. So shout out to Corbin Barrels. We very much appreciate that. It is. There we go. Now it's actually on the screen. Unfortunately, we don't really have a great place on the screen to put these comments sometimes, so we apologize for that. But Corbin Barrels is referencing his previous question on Ketel Marte, which was as follows. He said, if Ketel was in fact available tonight, why was he not used with the bases loaded and only one out for Ildemar Vargas? Not trying to stir the pot, genuinely curious. It worked out in the end, but hindsight is 2020. Jack, I know you and I were texting back and forth during the game, and I asked you this exact same question. It was sort of puzzling in the 7th inning when the Diamondbacks had the bases loaded and one out, and they opted not to pinch it with Ketel Marte.
I don't know what happened there. I'm not in Milwaukee. I'm home. I saw the telecast like everybody else. We all saw that Ketel had his equipment on, and then after the fact, we saw Torrey and Ketel talking. So I don't really know what happened there and what his thinking was. He might have addressed it on the TV postgame. I'll certainly reach out to some of our friends that are there and see if they can tell me if there was any response on that one. So yeah, TBD. I don't have an answer, but I'll try to get you one.
Obviously, it didn't look great in the moment because Ildemar Vargas bounced into a double play that ended that inning. It was a pretty rough moment there. Ildemar Vargas certainly puts the ball in play a good amount. So maybe that made Torey Lovullo feel better, but also putting the ball in play is not necessarily great in that situation, as we saw, because it also can result in a double play. So, I had the exact same question as the game was going on. So certainly understand where the question comes from there, Corbin Barrels. Moving on from that, Jack, I don't think we have to dive too much into this, but we did reference earlier that Pavin Smith was gunned out at home plate by a pretty wide margin. Felt like a questionable decision by third base coach Tim Bogar at the time. And we do have some screenshots that we can share here just to take a closer look at that situation. Here is Milwaukee's left fielder coming up with the throw after he had made the play. You can see Pavin has just rounded third at this point. And then if we go here to our next image, William Contreras has nearly received the ball as Pavin is still, a good 8-10 feet from home plate. And then once Contreras has received the ball, Pavin is frankly nowhere close here. As I said earlier, Jack, you could understand wanting to be kind of aggressive there. There's 2 outs in the inning, but that wasn't a great look when Pavin was thrown out by that wide of a margin.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to Tim, and he said he felt familiar and knew the speed of the players that he was going to be making these calls on, and apparently, just the 2 outs overrode the knowledge he should have had about Pavin's lack of speed. I mean, the way that ball was hit right to Yelich. The one thing that was pointed out by Steve Berthume is, Yelich has been mostly DHing. He's played very few games in the outfield this year, so maybe they were thinking about that. Like, okay, Yelich is out there and left, let's take advantage of him. But the ball, he fielded it very shallow, and he made a quick release, and, it was a good throw. So you're really depending on him bobbling the ball at that point, or just throwing, being very wide up over towards first base, the ball sailing on him, something like that. Instead, he threw a strike, and that was that.
It was a really good play by Yelich. I mean, he executed it perfectly. But even if he had executed it a little bit less perfectly, it is probably still a manageable play there for Milwaukee. So not a great look there for the Diamondbacks. They get the win anyway. So fortunately, this one didn't cost them at all. We're gonna jump into another conversation here about some Diamondbacks position players, some of the prospects that we've seen spend time in the majors this season, and kind of what their status is going into 2026. We'll do that on the other side of this break.
Okay, KP, this is your first Arena Club experience. We're going to open a slab pack together. So first off, we're going to buy one of those $25 slab packs, and we get to see what is in the pack. There it is. The Grail, which is the best card in the pack and worth the most. There are some other cards that we're chasing, and you can see the entire lineup so that you know what you're in the running for. There's the Yamamoto signed card. Now, let's open up our pack and see how we do. We have ourselves a really cool graphic, and then a Shohei Ohtani 50-50 card from last year. What do you want to do? Should we sell it right back to them for 16, or should we keep it?
You should give it to me. I'll keep it.
Good answer. Fine, I will give it to you. Since the Blue Jays didn't get Ohtani, you can get this 50-50 card instead. Use the code FOUL, F-O-U-L, to get yourself 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase. Yes, you get to keep that card if you want it. They send it to you. FOUL at arenaclub.com/foul.
Well, Jack, you mentioned it earlier that with Pavin Smith potentially needing an IL stint after his injury today, maybe this opens the door for Tyler Locklear to get more regular playing time over at first base. We've seen Locklear get a decent amount of playing time so far this year. We've seen Adrian Del Castillo get a decent number of reps. Of course, Blaze Alexander as well. And going into 2026, one of the biggest questions the Diamondbacks can answer is, what do they have in some of these guys? To what extent should they be counting on some of these guys going into next year? And Jack, I know you did some research and analysis on this topic, looking at the performance of a number of these different young position players.
Yeah, I think some of our followers, follow me on Twitter, on X, and might have seen this chart already today. Some of you have not. The chart that's on the screen shows essentially rookies, or in Blaze Alexander's case, second-year players, but everyone else on the page has rookie status intact. And it's Blaze Alexander, Adrian Del Castillo, Tim Tawa, Tyler Locklear, Jorge Barrosa, Tristan English, and Jordan Lawler. And they're ranked in order of OPS plus heading into today's game. So Blaze hit a home run and Del Castillo had a couple of hits. So their numbers will all go up a little bit. It shows their OPS plus, their WAR, batting average, OBP, slugging, and OPS. And cumulatively, these players have hit 191 with a 259 OBP and a 323 slug for a 582 OPS, and struck out 183 times in 571 plate appearances, which is 32%. There's 5 players on the list that have struck out over 30% of the time, and only Tim Tawa at 27% and Jorge Barrosa at 26%, which is still high, are under 30. So what I was looking at here is, we have mostly a bunch of 24 and 5 and 6-year-olds. Tristan English was just DFA'd. He's 28. And Jordan Lawler is 22 and hoping for a September 1 call-up. And the gist here is simply, unfortunately, none of the players have really jumped out at the plate. Now, Blaze is an above replacement level player this year, clearly at 1.4 WAR heading into tonight. And that's mostly on the strength of his defense, which has been excellent. The batting has been slightly below average. But he's playing a really good third base, so he's been above replacement level. And basically everyone else on the list has been, at best replacement level or well below it. So a second in that Twitter thread, a secondary chart that I put a link to just showed, if you look at all the rookies, players with rookie eligibility, there are 20 players with at least 50 plate appearances and 100 OPS plus, and a minimum 0 WAR. Okay, so in other words, at least replacement level and at least a league average hitter in 50 plus plate appearances with rookie status. There's 20 of them in the major leagues this year, and none of them are a Diamondback. And there's a number of players that have gotten substantial playing time. So it was just something that stood out to me. It would have been nice to have at least one of those guys be on that list. But I don't mean it to come off as they're all doomed and they're all failed. It's time to give up on all of them. That's never what I was talking about. It was just a statement of the fact. They didn't do it this year. So that's where we're at.
Jeff Irving makes a good point in the chat. He says Blaze took off when he started getting regular playing time. Weird concept, right? None of the other guys on this list have gotten much run at all. And that's a fair point. I mean, it is tough for a young player to get in any kind of rhythm at the big league level if they aren't getting those everyday reps. And I think Blaze Alexander is the only one on the list who's really gotten that consistent opportunity. I guess Tim Tawa there for a while was playing a decent amount for the Diamondbacks, but then he obviously started to struggle after that.
Yeah, I mean, Tim was playing a lot, and kind of a combination. There were some guys coming. Cattell came back, and later Jake got called up. But Tim had started struggling and really was lost at the plate for a while before he really lost a lot of playing time. And of course, Locklear had a pretty stable run there for a couple of weeks before Pavin came back. And it's not like he hasn't played at all since Pavin came back. And he's clearly looked very confused. And so it's not, you can't just pin this on the team like, well, you got to put all 7 of these guys in there to play all the time. Obviously, this isn't the Miami Marlins, with a locked into a 98 loss season, from whatever year, and you're just going to go out there and play 6 rookies. You can't do that either. I mean, the point is that, there's other contending teams. When I mentioned those 20 rookies, there's contending teams where the guys came up, played well enough to edge their way in and do something with the playing time and opportunity they were given. Blaze has done that. The other guys have not.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Jordan Lawler's on this list too, but we're talking about 22 plate appearances for 2025. Sure. I mean, it's basically nothing. But maybe we see a decent amount of Jordan Lawler here down the stretch, Jack. I know he has played a few games in Reno at this point. His numbers there are pretty good, as they pretty much always are. Of course, when you factor in the hitter-friendly environment, I think he's been just a little bit above league average in AAA so far, but you're still only talking about a handful of games at this point.
Can you pull the chart up one more time, please?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, guys. What I'm really trying to talk about here is it would have been nice to get more production from at least one or two of these guys. It's just that simple. If you're going to be a Diamondbacks team, you're going to be dependent on bringing players up from the minor leagues and making an impact on your major league team in years that you're trying to be competitive. Okay, and my point here was that they didn't even get close to a league average hitter out of any of them in any sample size. That's the bottom line.
Other than Blaze, I guess, who at least is in kind of the general neighborhood of being league average.
94 is in the general neighborhood, and now he's probably 96 or 8 or something. So, outside of Blaze. So, that's been kind of my point. Like, you're trying to contend, you're going to need a couple of these guys to step up and step in. And have better rookie seasons. I mean, there are good rookies out there playing on contending teams that were not intended to be playing as much as they are from the beginning of the year. And you need that. This organization, this team is going to need that kind of player to step up. And hopefully over the next 30 days, we see a couple of guys move forward. Maybe Tyler Locklear gets in a groove. I was thinking about him. He knew that Pavin Smith was coming back all along, and maybe there was a pressure on him there, knowing that when Pavin comes back, he's going to lose playing time. He's not a stupid guy. He's pretty smart, actually. So even before Torrey had the talk with him, I'm sure he could see the writing on the wall that he was going to lose some playing time. And if Pavin goes down for, a few weeks with a quad strain, I mean, Locklear's got an unobstructed runway here. Maybe he'll relax a little bit and get back into his groove. I hate to see Pavin get hurt. Just back-to-back 2-hit games. They need him to hit and perform as well. But, this is an opportunity for Locklear to get going. So let's go.
El Gallo in the chat said Del Castillo is tough. What will they do with him? He needs consistent at-bats. And, yeah, at a certain point here, Jack, I mean, it is a little tough to see how you get playing time for all these guys. Is there a world where you can get Blaze Alexander in there most every day, and Jordan Lawler if he comes back up, and Adrian Del Castillo and Tyler Locklear? There's some other names here as well. It might be tough for the Diamondbacks in the last month, even with the extra roster spot they received. There's only so many at bats to go around.
Right, but I mean, look, there's a flip side of this, which is they're also being given, advantageous matchups as much as possible too. So that balances out some of that. I mean, during the last week, 10 days, Tyler Locklear wasn't asked to face the toughest right-hand pitchers.
Right.
So there's that too. We need to take that into account.
Which I guess makes some of these numbers, look even maybe a little worse than they are, because there are a lot of advantage matchups built in here. These guys have still struggled for the most part across the board. Well, speaking of players the Diamondbacks need to step up, Jack, Eduardo Rodriguez certainly also falls in that category. He had a really rough start to open the series a couple nights ago, and we've made the Eduardo Rodriguez Madison Bumgarner comparison before, but I know you put this chart together the other day comparing Bumgarner and Erod after 33 starts as a member of the D-backs, and this comparison continues to not look particularly good.
Yeah, I mean, look, this isn't high-end analysis. This is just a little bit for not joking, but it is notable that Bumgarner did have a pretty decent first half in 2022, subsequent to all of this, until he fell apart in the second half of 22 and into 23, and refused to work with his pitching coaches and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is what we're getting from Eduardo. I mean, the only saving grace there is those FIP and xFIP numbers are better than the ERA, but they're still worse than average. I put the FIP minus and the xFIP minus in because the run environments are a little bit different. And so, park and league adjusted. But, a 117 FIP minus and a 106 xFIP minus, that's still significantly worse than average for a guy that you spent a lot of money on to be at least a solid number 3. And, he's a borderline, should he still be in the rotation, number 5. Yes, he has a couple of good starts here and there, and then he has a couple of bad ones, and then he has a couple of iffy ones. But I just think that, with Eduardo, if he has one or two more, if he has a bad start against the Dodgers this weekend on Monday, I'm going to ask Torrey, have you considered putting him in the bullpen?
Yeah, which, I understand the idea of the question, but also the Diamondbacks are not exactly loaded with starting pitching depth at this point. So I imagine even asking that question, you're maybe getting it like, is that a thought the Diamondbacks have considered in the past? It doesn't seem like that's something they would realistically consider right now, even despite the fact that Erod is clearly not performing well.
Yeah, I certainly don't expect Torrey to give one of his answers like he occasionally gives me, like, oh, you're like a fly on the wall. Have you been in my office? When he wants to tease, because, oh, that's a great question. But sometimes I just throw the stake in the ground with him and throw a question out there, which it's a question, but it's also a statement.
Yeah.
Right. And get a reaction from him. And I want to hear what he has to say, and I want to get him on record on it. Because if it continues to go like this, then the questions will persist, and I've got him on record from the first time. So that's where it's going to go.
There's really, in my head, Jack, there's basically no way, as long as he's healthy, that Erod isn't in the 2026 opening day rotation. It's basically a foregone conclusion. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be in there. It kind of reminds me of Madison Bumgarner's situation back in 2023, where he really struggled at the end of 22. As you said, he was actually pretty good in the first half of 22. He really struggled down the stretch. And anytime we would ask in spring training of 23, is Bumgarner in your rotation? Mike Hazen made it very clear from the start of spring training that wasn't even really a viable question in his mind, that Bumgarner was going to be in the rotation as long as he was healthy. And I think we're in the same situation with Erod. He'll be at basically the same point in his contract next year with, entering his second to last year under the contract. Obviously, there is another year that could vest depending on innings pitched. I don't feel so confident right now that that fifth year of this contract is actually going to vest, but I don't really see the D-backs considering taking Erod out of the rotation the rest of the way this year, because they're kind of out of the race anyway. And even going into next year, I think it's going to be pretty obvious, unless he really shows them early in the season that he just, that they actually have a better option than him.
Mike was wrong.
True.
He was dead wrong. He was flat out wrong. It was a very poor decision-making process, and they worsened their situation by compounding their bad decisions. I even remember Derek Hall saying in spring training that year, hey, we're not going to make decisions on who should and shouldn't be in the rotation based on salary and payroll. And I just kind of rolled I was standing like 3 feet from
They did
them,
exactly that.
That's exactly what they said. And that's, they did the exact opposite of what they said. And it's just, it's something that needs to be addressed. They can't duck it. And I'm not going to let them, because that's my job.
They were one, I guess there's a bunch of ways you could frame this, but they were one really savvy Evan Longoria slide away from, you could view it as that Madison Bumgarner decision costing them their postseason, and of course what went on to be a World Series run. These decisions that you make early in the year, even though it might not feel like a huge deal at the time, they really can have really big consequences, especially if you're a team like the Diamondbacks that isn't very likely to make the postseason by 7 or 8 games. Every game is really going to matter for them. So I would like to think in a sense, Jack, that they'll think differently this time. But given the fact that I don't really think they will, and also the fact that Eduardo Rodriguez, despite his struggles, is still one of the 5 best starters in the organization right now. I mean, I don't even think there's a whole lot of debate there. I mean, unless you think that Bryce Jarvis as a starter in the big leagues is going to be able to give you 5 or 6 innings of a ERA in the mid 5s every time out, that's not a high bar to clear, but I'm not sure Jarvis is someone you'd expect to clear it at this point.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm engaged in a little bit of recency bias where I watch Erod and Pfaadt just get blown out of the water in less than 3 innings and each give up 5-run innings. And then Jarvis and Jake Woodford come in and restore order and retire hot hitting lineups. I mean, something's really wrong here.
Yeah.
It's not just Erod. There's something really wrong with Brandon Pfaadt too. I mean,
That's
desperately wrong.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation we could have is, what could the Diamondbacks do to get Brandon Pfaadt back on track? He just hasn't had the same level of swing and miss this year, and obviously even last year for him, he had some good peripheral numbers, but the surface level stats were not good. He's still kind of trying to figure things out.
I just want to mention here, so Brandon Pfaadt has the highest batting average against, the highest slugging against, and the highest OPS against of any qualified pitcher in the major leagues. 284 batting average against, 483 slugging against, and 814 OPS against. Those 3 numbers are all the highest and worst of any innings qualified pitcher. And by the way, in case anyone's tempted to think, well, it must be some bad luck in there or BABIP issues. No. His batting average is 300, 16 point higher, and his slug is 5 something. Sorry, I got it written down here somewhere. Anyway, it's 539, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, his xERA was like 5.7 something. We're not talking about a guy that's running into bad luck with being hit. So there's a serious problem there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Jeff Irving said Christian Mena over Erod for sure, which is, I think you'd certainly like to see what Mena could give you. Would it shock me if Mena was able to perform better than Erod? No, I don't think so. I think it's definitely possible that he could, but if you're the D-backs, I don't think you're making that assumption either. I just think that Erod at this point in his career, and given some of the peripheral numbers you mentioned earlier that look at least okay, I think you still would expect a little bit more from him moving forward than someone like Mena, who's, I mean, how many major league starts have we seen from Christian Mena at this point? I know he had a couple of outings out of the bullpen this year, but I guess it's one. He's made one major league start. It was the game against the Dodgers that didn't go well for him. And this year, to his credit, he was really effective in those 3 outings out of the bullpen. But his numbers in AAA have been good, but have not necessarily blown us away at any point.
Ernesto says the Twitter ultra nerds were right all along. Pfaadt's fastball is laughably hittable. It's talking about Lance Brodsky. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Brozdowski, I think. Yeah.
Brozdowski. I can never get his name right. It's funny that you say that, Ernesto. The reason I read it is because I sent that video back to Jesse about a week ago. It just happened to, I went back and actually watched that again just to see what he was talking about there. And unfortunately, he was spot on.
Yeah, it's a really high spin rate pitch, but spin rate doesn't necessarily equate to being dominant. And we've definitely seen that as an issue for Pfaadt in his major league career. Steven mentions in the chat that Kohl Drake is Rule 5 eligible, but he got pulled from Reno for some reason. We do have some news on that front, Jack, with Kohl Drake being hurt. And our good friend Alex Weiner reported that. He said there's no concern for 2026, but it sounds like he is going to miss most, if not all, of the remainder of this season.
Yeah, is a strained rotator cuff or something like that?
Yeah, I'll look up Alex's tweet. I think it was a shoulder or a rotator cuff, something like that. Let's see here.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Shoulder sprain is what Alex tweeted out yesterday. So par for the course, given the way that injury luck has gone for Diamondbacks pitchers in 2025. Not exactly surprising. Now he's officially a Diamondback, right, Jack?
Yeah.
Well,
Sad.
yeah. It would have been one of the most interesting things to watch the rest of the way was Kohl Drake. We figured he probably would have gotten a September call up. Certainly would have been interesting to see what the D-backs had in him, but he's going to kind of remain a wild card going into 2026.
Yeah. Speaking of the September call-ups, I mean, they can only bring up 2. And Ryan Thompson, I don't know if he's going to have a second rehab outing or not. He had a successful one yesterday. I watched it. It was 1 inning. He was fine. His velocity was, 87.5 on the sinker. So it's, he's not getting back to 91 or 92, in this lifetime, most likely. So he's just going to have to make it work with less velocity. But he got a couple of ground balls and looked healthy and came out of it fine. So I don't know if he gets a second rehab. If he does get a second rehab, then that would probably come on like the 28th or 9th, probably 2 days down, and then pitch again, which means that he would then come back on September 1st. So he may be the September 1st call-up along with Jordan Lawler. That's what I'm thinking that they're going to do. But, they may decide that Ryan's ready now and bring him back and then option a reliever.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also not like if you bring Ryan Thompson back, then you have to use an extra roster spot in order to get him here. I think, frankly, there are a variety of relief pitchers whose status is not necessarily set in stone moving forward. So there's maybe a variety of moves the D-backs could make if they wanted to bring in some other pitcher from Reno as well. We'll go ahead and finish things up here for this edition of Snakes Territory. We really appreciate all of you being here with us during this late night live edition. As always, be sure to like this video. It helps with the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you could subscribe here as well, we'd also really appreciate that. Make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you're joining us after the fact, you can leave us a comment. We always love to hear from you that way. Over on social media, you can find us. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59 on Twitter. And our show is at Snakes Territory. And Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. Some great analysis and reporting over there. So make sure you don't miss out on that. Jack, any final thoughts as we say goodbye here?
Just making a note on my homework. I got to find out about Cattell pinch hitting.
Yeah. I am curious for sure. One of those situations where it's not all that big of a question because the Diamondbacks won the game anyway, but I think we're all still curious what the thinking was there. So hopefully, maybe in our next episode we can revisit that question for Corbin Barrels, who asked that question to us earlier. Well, thank you again to all of you for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.